नमस्कार. प्रुडंटाच्या डिबेटाचेर ह्या खाशेल्या कार्यावळी तुमकां येवकार. वर्स भशेन आमी अंदूय डिबेटीचेर ही खाशेली कार्यावळ तुमचे मुखार घेवन आयल्यात. फक्त अंदू फरक इतलोच की मुख्यमंत्री मनोहर पर्रीकारान डिटेल बजेट मांडिल्लें ना. वर्साक आमचे जे डिबेट करपाक हांगा पॅनल आसताले तांकां आमकां डिटेल टॅक्स प्रपोजल्स जावं रेवेन्यूआची प्रपोजल्स जावं स्किम्स जावं ह्यो सगळ्यो आमकां खबर आसताल्यो. अंदू ह्यो प्रेजेंटेशनाक आमकां जरी मेळिल्ल्यो ना तरी मुख्यमंत्र्यान जे टोटल बजेट प्रेजेंट केलां तातूंत बजेटाचे टोटल फिगर मेळटा, तातूंत टोटल रेवेन्यू कितलो रेज जावं जाय, रेवेन्यू प्रपोजल्स आसात ती कांय गजालींक कळटात, कांय एक्सपेंडिचराचे प्रपोजल्स थोडी फार कळटात. म्हणजे आवाठ जो आसा बजेटाचो तो आमकां अदमास आसा ताजो. तर करंट इकॉनॉमीक जो सिनारियो आसा गोंयांत त्या फाटभुंयेचेर हें इनक्रीज्ड बजेट जेन्ना एनफोर्स करतलो सरकार फुडल्या वर्सभरा खातीर सरकारा फुडें आव्हानां कसलीं कसलीं आसतलीं हाजेर तरी आमी निश्चित चर्चा करूं शकतात. आनी ताजे खातीर ह्या डिबेटाचेर चर्चा करपा खातीर आज आमचे बरोबर आसा विनायक बाब दत्ता, चार्टर्ड अकावंटंट, पै काणे ग्रुपाचे अतुल पै काणे, निलेश बोर्डे युनिवर्सिटीचे एसिस्टंट प्रोफेसर आनीक मॅक्सन्स ग्रुपाचे किरीटभाई मगनलाल. रिटेल मगनभाई जे आसात ते रिटेल ग्रुपाचो जो पर्स्पेक्टीव आसा गोंयच्या इकॉनॉमीक सद्या रिटेलिंगाचें स्ट्रक्चर कशें आसा, तांचे टॅक्साचो इम्पॅक्ट कसो आसा, तांची परिस्थिती कशी आसा सद्या GST रेजिमाक, हातूंतल्यान आमी ह्या बजेटाक पळयतले. ताजो पर्स्पेक्टीव मगनभाई दितले. नंतर पै काणे ग्रुप ही इज डेफिनेटली पै काणे ग्रुप इज रिप्रेझेंटींग द मॅन्युफॅक्चरींग सेक्टर. तो मॅन्युफॅक्चरींग सेक्टराचेर नवी जी टॅक्स रेजीम आयल्या आनीक सरकाराची जी आयची इकॉनॉमीक परिस्थिती आसा ताजेर मॅन्युफॅक्चरींग सेक्टराचेर ह्या बजेटाचो लोड नेमको कितलो येतलो, हो मॅन्युफॅक्चरींग सेक्टर हो भार कसो कितें उखलतलो बजेटाचो हाजो पर्स्पेक्टीव आमकां तांचे कडल्यान मेळटलो. दत्तबाब ऑफकोर्स एन एनालिसीस फ्रॉम टॅक्सेशन पॉयंट ऑफ व्यू, रेवेन्यू सरकाराचे कशे कितें येवंक शकतात, सरकाराचे ग्रोथ अथवा डॉमेस्टीक प्रोडक्टाची जी सद्याची स्थिती आसा ताजी स्थिती ताजे दृश्टिकोनांतल्यान एनालिसीस. एंड ऑफकोर्स बोर्डे काल इकॉनॉमीक सर्वे जो प्रेजेंट जाला आनी आयची फिगर्स बजेटांतली कितली टॅली जातात, वास्तवीक स्थिती कितें आसा हाजेर एनालिसीस त्या फिगरांची सगळी घुसपट सोडोवपा खातीर आमचे बरोबर बोर्डे आसा. तर फर्स्ट आय वूड लायक टू स्टार्ट विथ द इंडस्ट्री. सी द चीफ मिनिस्टर he has presented a budget. It's an incremental budget looks like because as last time it was almost 16,000 crores. This time he has presented a budget worth almost 17,000 crores. So it's an incremental budget. Hazo industry share, how much of this share would the industry be able to lift? Are you in a position to lift this additional share of revenue mobilization or the taxation that is presented in the incremental budget? What's the state of manufacturing sector right now?
So I'm happy to see that Goa has actually become a manufacturing destination now. So at least the survey shows that, number one. Number two, I'm very happy with the spend, what has been planned for industry and for creating new jobs. From the data which is given in the economic survey, it's very clear that a lot of self-employment schemes have been implemented by the government over the last year. There's a tremendous substantial increase in the CM's Rozgar Yojana. So when you look at all of this, I think that yes, we will be able to contribute substantially towards making this, taking a leap against our previous receipts. And the good part also has been that with the taxation getting neutral now with the GST coming in, Goa can at least be equal to, if not at a major disadvantage what we've been all these years.
Okay, so there is a relief that way.
I definitely think
because every time it used to be indirect taxation, it used to be a regressive. Indirect taxation used to be regressive that way. You won't find that much taxation in this budget.
So
that's what
the
you want to
CST
say.
going away is a big advantage to Goan industry. So what today remains is only a cost. Other costs remain higher than the rest of the country. But CST going away is definitely a big advantage to the local industry today.
मगन बाब ते सांगतात त्या कोतान manufacturing sector is in a position to back this budget. दॅट्स वॉट म्हणजे प्रपोजलां पळयत जाल्यार तशें दिसता तांकां चित्र. पूण तुमच्या रिटेलाची परिस्थिती सद्या कितें आसा इन द न्यू टॅक्स रेजीम आनी सपोर्टींग दीस गव्हर्मेंट्स प्रपोजल?
रिटेलाक आतां इन द लास्ट 1 year ऑलमोस्ट एक धक्को पडला फॉर रिटेल बिकॉज ऑफ सो मेनी चेंजीस. गव्हर्मेंट पॉलिसीज इतकी चेंज जाल्ली आसा. देर हॅज बीन डिमॉनिटायझेशन, देर हॅज बीन GST. दो लॉंग टर्म बेनिफीट शॉर्ट टर्म पेन म्हणटा तशें ते. बट as far as retailing is concerned, they always say that a budget will always tell us what is becoming more expensive and what you cannot afford.
Yeah.
But finally, people turn out finding ways by which they will keep buying it, thankfully. So, a budget or the changes in the government structures and taxation structures today will create a short-term gap in the retail scenario. But long-term, actually, it all stabilizes. सो आमकां जे पयलीं दिसतालें की हे सगळे गव्हर्मेंटान डिसिजन घेतिल्ले आसा ते लॉंग टर्म रिटेलाक अफेक्ट जातले ते आमी पळयलां की इट हॅज नॉट अफेक्टेड ऑन अ लॉंग टर्म बेसीस. सो रिजिलियन्स इज व्हेरी स्ट्रॉंग. पीपल बाउन्स बॅक. एक आसा बेनिफीट कितको मेळ्ळा तुमकां विथ ऑल दी टॅक्सेशन इज अ बीग क्वेश्चन मार्क. बिकॉज
एंड कंज्युमराक कितलो?
एंड कंज्युमराक आनी जर मेळ्ळ्यार बेनिफीट जर मेळ्ळा तो यू कॅनॉट एक्चुली पूट इट इन फिगर्स. फॉर इन्स्टन्स तुमकां एक एग्जांपल दिल्यार आय विल जस्ट नॉट बी एबल टू फॅदम की लास्ट टायम म्हाजी टूथपेस्ट एक 25 रुपया आशिल्ली आतां कितकी जाल्या 24 रुपया जाल्या 24.5 रुपया जाल्या. दॅट बेनिफीट म्हाका पावल्या की ना. इन द रिटेल सेक्टर इट बिकम्स व्हेरी डिफिकल्ट टू एक्चुली फॅदम ऑर टू पूट इट डावन ऑन व्हॅल्यू टर्म्स. बट ओवरऑल सिनारियो जर तुमी पळयल्यार इट इज बेनिफिशियल. इट्स ओन्ली एडमिनिस्ट्रेटीव which is affecting the retail sector. At the GST ayla, overall it is definitely a plus. But as far as administration is concerned, filings are concerned, it's still a pain. But it's resilient.
Can we say the GST has by now stabilized?
No, we cannot say that because a number of items are still outside the purview of the tax structure. So again, there is a lot of ambiguity. Whether it comes in 8%, 18%, 28%.
And even they are thinking of having lesser slabs instead of 5, 3.
Exactly,
2, like
exactly.
those.
So ते अजून stabilize झाले ना. दुसरे आसा especially for place like Goa, for the liquor industry, it's a very complex situation.
Yeah.
Because they have to suffer VAT and GST. And as far as inputs are concerned, it is a big issue for them, which they can take inputs against VAT and which they should be taking against GST or offset it against GST. The same thing is happening in tourism. टुरिजमाकूय तोच प्रॉब्लम जाला GSTचो. वॉट इज इट दॅट कॅन बी कन्सिडर्ड अंडर GST इनपूट क्रेडीट. ITC खंय खंय मेळटा तुमकां, खंय मेळना, खंय तुमी फोरगो करचें पडटा ते ITC आनी खंय बेनिफीट मेळटा ती अजून क्लॅरिटी ना. इट वील हॅपन बट एज ऑफ नाव इट इज द पेन फॅक्टर स्टील रिमेन्स.
So Dattaba, finally this is the perspective of industry and the retail. But finally हातूंक आनी एक त्या GST रेजिमाक जो आसा तो एंड कंज्युमर. Consumer, he says, has not yet been that much benefited from this GST regime as far as passing the benefit to the end consumer is concerned. Finally, that taxpayer also has to support this budget. So, how are you looking at these things? The revenue that will come finally into the kitty of the government.
Absolutely. Two things, but before I go into the subject, let me extend our greetings to the Chief Minister, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, who had to fly down 800 kilometers to be with the state on the presentation of the budget. Greetings to him. Coming to this specific point on the taxation, particularly the GST and all that, any tax which you do will have a difficulty in the implementation. So it's a change. It's a change, and if you go and implement a change, we know how difficult it is because of you take into account so many steps, so many people. Nowadays, the IT hardware infrastructure and all that, and what you mentioned, Kirit, is very right, because we have not done a true GST. We have done a hybrid situation where you have actually there are 7 slabs. If you take all the cesses and everything together, there are actually 7 slabs. Complicated with to be complicated further with 2 main items pertinent to Goa, which are even today outside the GST, which is petroleum and which is alcohol. These are the two things. So, to that effect, to that extent, it becomes more difficult and a rigorous way in implementation, and therefore the disruption. I was expecting, in fact, in the economic survey, a little quantification of what are the two major events in the economy had a bearing on the Goa economy. One was the demonetization, because in the press reports, in good informed sources, there was a figure of 140 crores in the loss in the Goa economy because of the demonetization. I was expecting some sketch.
No, the economic survey shows a drop of deposits in the banks post demonetization. Though the deposits in the banks are almost 68,000 crores.
Yes, it's a bit quizzical, of course.
It's more than the GDP. Our GDP is almost 60,000 crores, and bank deposits are 68,000 crores.
Absolutely. Kirit, coming back to the to the issue of the implementation, we have seen in all cases in the past also that our plans are excellent, marvelous, the way we see things, but the way we go and implement it is disastrous, and it contains a very, very big disruption. Okay, so that's what has happened, but I agree with Kirit, and that we have not stabilized yet. It will take time. It will take about 5 years.
Before coming to
one point is that those two items are not pertinent only to Goa. This is common across the country. So petroleum products and alcohol are not part of the GST.
They are more important to Goa.
But they want to include it now.
No,
it's on the agenda. Maybe in the next meeting it will come.
No, actually the tourism industry has a lot of punch on the Goan economy. So that's why alcohol becomes very important, petroleum becomes very important, because not so much because of the industry. And out of the few industries, there is one industry which is heavily dependent on the mining, for example, the fertilizers, for example, they are heavily dependent on gas and petroleum and all that. So that to Goa with its small kitty, it becomes more skewed. That is how I view it. By the way, I must add one point there, and because to the viewers it should not create a confusion, is that if you say 57% is the manufacturing, 54% is the manufacturing contribution, you have to view it with the primary, which is the mining and agriculture. Now, mining having gone down substantially last year, what has happened is that percentage it bore to the total has gone down.
So it's per se the manufacturing hasn't risen.
Actually,
it's only the number.
The effect has been distributed over the two heads. So that's how it got. It is an optical, somewhat an optical.
Before coming to board,
sorry, but it has been a skewed distribution of heads, because we still believe that the tertiary sector is still more prominent,
still more powerful
than your
but the economic survey, the figure shows
absolutely it's tourism all the way, no? And tourism is a heavily tilted towards the tertiary. It's basically tertiary.
ताणी जो आता मुद्दा मांडला त्याच फाटभुंयेचेर Goa has almost, I think, almost 28 to 30,000 traders. Is this, can they enforce this GST so that the end consumer gets the benefit? Can this, does this commercial tax department has that staff strength to enforce this GST up to the end point so that consumer gets a profit, end profit? Or has it been enforced to that level? Has the enforcement been up to that level?
So, commercial tax के लिए क्या था? There is no department in the government which can enforce anything, frankly speaking. So, let us not see the enforcement side. आम्ही पळोवचें whether the trading side is in favor of GST or not. And the good news is that traders per se are all in favor of GST. That is precisely why GST has been taken very positively, despite the fact, and it is across the country. कहीं तुम्ही पळयात GST, if you see as a broad perspective, GST is something that has been welcomed by everybody else. But like we said, anything new that comes, and with our whole history of enforcement and of following rules and protocols, it's taking a longer time.
Yeah.
But enforcement is na, and it cannot happen also. You know, we don't have the sufficient strength. Apart from strength, I don't think we have the expertise. आमचे जर डिपार्टमेंटान खंय पळयल्या, even in commercial taxes, not to belittle anybody, but you don't get a clear picture once you approach them and say की अरे आजे तुम्ही म्हाका मातशें एक opinion दियात, People are not in a position even at that level to give.
Dattaba,
clear
ह्याच
picture.
पॉइंटाचेर is this case true with the restaurants? Because restaurants got them, they got themselves down from 18% to 12%, finally to 5%. They never gave the benefit to the end users. So is this case true with the restaurants, that they want to be in the GST, they want to pass on the benefits to the end user? Is this a picture?
Yes, but a little before that, you mentioned whether we have sufficient strength to have it implemented, have this entire, behemoth involving manufacturers, traders, sellers, etc. My answer is yes. In fact, the IT systems for GST is state of the art. The design of the IT system for the GST, in effect, you require lesser number of people to have a smooth implementation. Why you have rough implementation is that because we have too many people. So, but that apart, coming back to restaurants, we are not in the in some way in the habit or in the culture of taking what is actually due. No restaurant in Goa, I haven't seen, at least there might be some which I have not been to, but I don't remember having seen a menu which has come down.
Yeah.
I remember having seen lots of menus where the figures have gone up, but not the other way. So, but the thing is, that doesn't mean that the traders or the hoteliers or the restaurateurs are not in favor of implementation of GST. It's a simpler tax, it's far better, and you don't need so many people. You can do it yourself if you have the little time, and it takes no more than 7, 8, 10 minutes. So that's it. And that's such a beautiful, it's a state of the art. But the problem is, if you go and sit there, you'll be landed up with 4 hours time because the system hangs up.
So you should have the bandwidth. So
Yes.
in both ways.
No, not my bandwidth, the government's bandwidth,
Exactly.
because,
So you
because
and
their
the
system
government.
hangs up actually. So that is a bit of irritation, which I am confident it will go in a matter of maybe months or so. It shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been there in the first place. We should have visualized that these are the requirements technically, and we should have put it in place. But having said that, it's okay. We are starting, so it will. But the passage of the benefits is of prime criterion, and it's not happening.
So I have a view here.
Yeah.
When we say that the GST and restaurants has reduced to 5%, they've also lost the benefit of taking ITC. The input tax credit has been denied to them. So if they have, actually, I believe that their cost would have gone up, because if you have purchases being done at 12% or 18% and you can't take input credit and you are charging only 5% VAT, which means on if you have 30% is your cost, you'll end up paying almost more than 5% as your tax. So I don't think the cost will go down for them. It is only that they'll be at the lower slab to the consumer. It will appear 5% GST, but the overall cost will not come down. They can't pass on anything. So this is my view on the taxation part
Coming
of it.
to this figure of Goa being a manufacturing state, when we enforced GST, we considered Goa as a consumer state, and we made an argument that Goa will be finally benefited from this. Goa is a very high inflated trading service industry involved state. Do you still believe that Goa is a manufacturing state just because of these figures? Is it a fact? What has happened in last 3-4 years that we have turned from a service industry to a manufacturing hub?
So I will look
Has
at
anything happened on ground? That's what I'm asking.
yes,
Because
so it's all there
many
in the
people
report
debate
here.
these new CSO statistics figures. Even at the central level, the former RBI governor had disputed these new CSO figures, saying they don't tally with the grassroots situation of manufacturing sector, may it be exports or the manufacturing. So is this the real scenario in Goa, that Goa is a manufacturing hub with 54
No, it cannot increase by 10%.
Yeah.
What Atul said is correct, that there has been benefits in the PMY, Prime Minister's Yojana.
No, CM's Rozgar Yojana, there has been a creation.
There have been things there, but it's not something which will turn the GDP 10%.
Yeah.
That's something
So
impossible.
there is a lot of scope to doubt these figures.
So exactly. So that's, I mean, that's subject to more careful study and comparing apples with apples. We shouldn't be going and comparing certain things.
Now
with
I would
Sorry,
like to,
I want to just make one statement here, that I definitely think that the the gross domestic product from manufacturing has gone up as a percentage over the other sectors.
Yeah.
That could be because of
Yeah,
mining
because
reduction.
as I said, the mining was not there practically for the later 7 months or so. So previously also whatever little was there was trickles compared to the other figures, earlier figures. So that's
Now let me come to board. Now this is the perspective of retail, the industry and the accountancy. How do you look at this budget now from the common man's point of view, or is this economic survey really telling with the budget figures, or it really tallies with the actual economy? How are you looking at the enforcement?
Yeah, so the first thing, like I would just follow the suit of Mr. Binayak Datta and congratulate Mr. Manohar Parrikar for his presence today.
Definitely.
And I think greetings to him, and all our prayers are with him and for his speedy recovery. It was nice to see him in charge all over again. His body language was very positive and nice. So it was fantastic to see as a personal fan. Coming back to the budget part of it, I think what we need to all understand is that he has not really presented a budget. He has just presented a vote on account. So we really can't figure out the details.
Yeah.
There are some few points that, however, we would kind of pick up from economic survey, because I think you have a very pertinent question here, that whether the data tallies, whether the economic survey data tallies with the ground reality and also with the budget that's coming in. I think there seems to be a little distance between the tea and the lips. I mean, teacup and the lips, and there is no going back on that at all. For example, I would love to figure out the method of calculation of the secondary sector being the largest contributor to the GSDP. So that's going to be a first major thing that I would like to look at. However, something that you talked about, or there was a slide that you were showing about public debt on this. I think what we need to look at are three things in this. Number one, whenever you talk about public debt for a structurally changing economy like India, or for a growing economy like India, it's always not bad. Let's get this very clear. So taking loans is not always bad, or having borrowings is not always bad.
How you
utilize those borrowings. So I think it's a very welcome sign to figure out that there is an increase in capital expenditure, because this capital expenditure is a very unique, and in terms of economics is a very positive concept, because even if you consider 1 rupee spent on a capital expenditure, one does not really look at the disguised multiplier effect that a capital expenditure has. So even if, for example, in the figures that the finance minister has spoken of, even if he has achieved 3,000 crores, for example, I look at a multiplier effect of something to the tune of 4.5, which would trickle to something like 12,000 crores. So I mean, that's going to be one very, very important aspect that one would need to look at. What worries me, and I'm sure as business people, it would even worry people like Kirit Bhai and Atul, and that is the amount of money that is being spent on salary, even not so much even on interest. So I think there's too much being made on debt part of it from my end. But I think the amount of money being spent by the government on salaries, I think if you ask any business person, and if his salary to the total revenue had to grow by more than 12% or 13%, I'm sure they would all have a brainstorming session figuring out where are we going wrong. And here we are talking about 49% of the total expenditure being spent on salaries. So that's going to be a very key issue. In spite of saying that 49% of the total expenditure going on salaries, we are still looking at education, for example, where you have got almost 45% vacancies. For education, it is supposed to be foundation. Though we get up
still it's the biggest expenditure department.
No, it's only 2 or 3%. I mean, it's a national target that everybody is talking about of meeting 5% of the GSDP. Yeah, we are still talking about just 2.5 to 3%. So that's one thing that worries me. Another important thing, if what you are showing in slides, again, I have not really gone into the details of it, but what you have shown in slides, if something is going towards repayment of principal, I think that's another very good sign. Because it simply means that the old loans that have been, or the old borrowings that the government has done at a higher rate of interest are now being repaid, and you are trying to raise a new fund or a new borrowing but at a lower rate of interest, which simply would mean that at a given level of interest payments, the government is able to kind of raise more money, which is going to be utilized for various purposes. So I think that's another very important thing that we would have to really look at in this entire scenario. The other issue that I like about what he has spoken about today is emphasis on education. Not because I come from an educational field or I belong to that industry, but I very strongly believe, and I personally have always professed this idea, that we have over harping has happened on 4 pillars of democracy in terms of legislative, judiciary, executive and media. Yeah, this huge amount of over harping that has happened, but what we have really ignored in the bargain is the foundation of these 4 pillars, and that is education. So unfortunately, that is something that has been lacked. So increase in educational budget from any angle, and I must say this, that the educational budget should not be from the point of view of mere buildings, but also in terms of creating, filling up those requisite strategical vacancies. That's another very important point that comes to my mind. The second thing is there is a deficit of 3,000 crores in terms of capital, which somehow seems to not get accounted for.
No, that's the budget that they do it every year.
capital.
It's a budget budget deficit. So the net budget is actually 13,500 crores. It's not
the budget
17,500
crores.
Yeah.
Actually, the 3 things which he mentioned today, in my view, 2 are, one is good, of course, as Nilesh was saying, the education allotment of 2,400 crores. The second is neutral, because last year also we had a similar figure, but we didn't, apart from the ratio, we didn't do much visibly. So that's about 550 crores to the industry. To me, it's a neutral. But the third I didn't like is that there is a talk of borrowing another 1,500 rupees. Nilesh, for you, we repay about 1,000 crores a year, slightly more than that. But we are taking another 1,500, and now further we are saying that the expenditure increases by 17%, and the income is increasing by 6%. So that is what is a very big.
So where is it going? Where is the 1,500 crores
that
going?
We don't know now. We will probably come to know where the allocations have gone to.
So one thing is for sure that
But
the education budget has gone up.
1 second.
Yeah.
I have another little point, and that's giving me a little bit of anxiety, is that in the economic survey of yesterday, there was a talk of the taxation, okay, and it said that 15% we have gained from the tax collections. That means we collected 15% more, but it doesn't mention that 15% VAT was increased last year on petrol.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
and therefore you will see the petrol prices have considerably increased, although it's still lesser than all the states still, but it's of considerable import. Now, it shouldn't happen that slowly by this mechanism we again go on increasing and make it 80 bucks.
When we are coming to these borrowings,
Yes.
Since 2012, government used to borrow hardly 700 to 8,000 crores per year. Now the borrowings have touched almost 1,500 crores to 1,600 crores a year.
Absolutely.
The problem is every 10 years the principal matures. So from 2016 or 2022, government has to literally pay 1,500 to 1,600 crores on principal, not just interest.
Absolutely.
No, but once again,
There has been heavy
if you looked at what Nilesh said, if the investment is going into capital, then there is no problem. It'll have a multiplier year on year.
I want all four.
Our investment is not going into capital, it is
so
going
how-
into salaries.
So, no, 1 second.
Our problem is salaries. We pay 50% of all our income into salaries. And remember,
No, 1 second. We are talking about borrowings here.
no, one second.
We are discussing borrowings, not
today we-
not
He,
being
even he is funding a revenue deficit from that borrowing.
I'll put you in
Almost
perspective.
15% of revenue deficit is funded from these borrowings. That's the problem
No,
with
it's
the
a
government.
surplus budget. How do you say it is funding it from? When it's a surplus budget,
He
Surplus
shows it
revenue-
surplus
revenue
by
surplus
dropping
has
the
no
schemes.
meaning.
That's
But-
what they do
but
every
let
year.
me
They don't
explain.
enforce a 100% budget. That's why it becomes surplus.
Absolutely.
It's shown as surplus.
see, we can
But
only look at the papers
yeah,
in front
yeah,
of
yeah.
us, right?
Suresh,
The
let's
papers in front
understand
of us.
it. Let's understand this way.
That's the problem. That's why we are
Today-
debating the reality.
Suresh, today we have a borrowings bill of 13,000 crores.
Yeah.
All right. And
That's
we-
without the public account debt.
Yeah,
It's
if
only
you add that, that is 18,000,
It-
but I am taking only
Yeah.
the external loans, which is 13,000 crores. Our income, this year it's 13,000, which he announced just now, but our income historically used to be 9,000 crores. Okay. From this 9,000 crores, take away the salaries, because you have to pay salaries, interest, and the establishment costs and pensions. So that's 6,000 crores. So 9,000 minus 6,000 is 3,000, whereas you have a bill of 13,000 hanging over you. So that's the gravity of the situation, where every finance minister should point this out to the people.
In
They
fact,
must know what it
I
is.
want even the industry and retail industry to debate on this point, because when it comes to heavy borrowings, we consider that government spends it on capital expenditure. But now look at the spending of this government on capital. You have almost 6 to 7 bus stands today lying in Goa idle. They are constructed by GSD, not used, like Honda, like Varpoi. You have CHC constructed in Varpoi, which was not used. You have district hospital in Mapsa, which is 70% not utilized. You have ID hospital in Ponda, which building is almost 80% not utilized.
Ravindra Bhavan in Vasco.
Ravindra Bhavan forensic lab in Varna, you have constructed a huge building not utilized. You have Sakwale, now they are converting it into a Kala Bhavan.
Kala.
They don't know why it was constructed. Such a huge, massive buildings they have constructed, but they are not able to convert those buildings into institutes, because they can't recruit staff, they can't maintain them. And that's how the infrastructure is not put into use for a public utility. The huge spending has gone into these buildings post formation of GSIDC after 2002. But they have, other than the bridges which are in utility, you see hardly any of these buildings being 100% utilized. So this expenditure of 18,000 crores with borrowings, you will see lot many buildings and land acquisitions and stones being laid without, it's a dead expenditure. You can see it's happening with District Hospital Mapsa, it's happening with ID Hospital Mapsa, then South Goa District Hospital, that building is lying half completed for last 7 to 8 years. Hospicio, new building. So there are huge such buildings. I want you to debate, because finally you have to shell out from your pocket to fund these borrowings.
I have a view here. All those that you mentioned right now to us are as public utility services.
Yeah.
If we are going to invest capital, and if our capex is what Nilesh said, is something which is going to give a multiplier effect, I think it should be put into industry, which is going to really benefit.
This is the point,
So
that
on the table,
that infrastructure should benefit the industry.
So on the table today, Suyash, we have a number of proposals that Atul also will concur with me, that we have put up to the government to put up, let us say, logistics park. We have a number of proposals to put up
which will contribute to GDP.
Entertainment areas, entertainment parks,
Marinas,
which will
entertainment
which will
parks.
contribute
marinas.
to GDP.
These are the things which are going to contribute to GDP, and then, you know, as a trickle effect, it is going to benefit the public
What happens here is,
utilities that we are going to build.
every MLA proposes a project in his constituency, and whenever he is lost, that project is also lost
Absolutely.
halfway.
Right.
I remember.
So I want the industry's perspective
Yes.
also
So
on this
every
spending,
every
where
year
the
we-
government should spend.
Yeah, so I'll explain this.
Atul, every year we talk about this Sonsodo.
Yeah.
Every year here in this room we talk, but every year it's not happening.
It's not
We talk about IIT, we talk about IT park
Yeah.
at Chimbel, we talk about.
They have acquired lands, they have laid foundation stones, and they have kept the money parked.
So in all of this, let's talk about a fantastic waste management system.
Yeah,
The plant being
yeah.
put up at Pilen. So something has happened. Positive has
Yeah.
happened.
True.
I'll tell you a story of Morji, 15 years ago, when the Kolwal bridge or the Shiolim bridge was not there. Look at Borjim today. So it is given Perne an opportunity to combine with the rest of Goa.
Yeah.
And suddenly you see that Perne has become more prosperous than what it was. The landowners there have gained better prices. The hotels have come up there. There's an opportunity for employment. So infrastructure, public infrastructure cannot be denied. The last
Bridges,
man,
they have
Can
so,
we do
bridges
more?
have
That's
the
so one
utility,
second. So
they
let
have
me
utilized
put this.
it.
Let me put it this
Yes,
way.
I
So
did.
the last man on the street must get part of the system, must get access. Okay, he must have good health care. So hospitals coming up, we should not debate this. Whether hospital should come up for one person or 1,000 people, this cannot be debated. It has to come up.
Everybody must be utilized.
Yeah.
The
So
building has to be
I
utilized.
agree with that portion. I agree with that utilization must happen, but whether it must come up or not is not
No.
not a question.
Yeah.
It must come up. anything which benefits the common man must happen. Now, along with this, there must be one part where you are spending and the other part where you are earning. Industry will earn, retail will earn, education will earn. If you look at education, if you make education industry come to Goa, it's got very, very sparse, what would I say, take away from the system, from the state. But what it will contribute is a huge amount.
1,000 times more.
1,000 times more. So anything which has got a, what do you call it, multiplier effect is what we must bring in. Whatever has got the highest multiplier effect is what we must bring in. So we have to invest into industry, but at the same time strengthen the social side. We have to strengthen the social side. So it can't go one without the other. When somebody wants to come and get employed in Goa, the first thing they'll look at is, do you have the good, do you have good schools? Do you have good healthcare facilities? If we don't have these two, they will not come in.
Yeah, so I think, you know what, I would just take a very economic viewpoint to this, and I think we just take a little different viewpoint from what Kirit Bhai has probably taken. I think government has got no business to be actually promoting business. Businessmen are good enough, they are smart enough, they take care of themselves.
But they have to be a facilitator.
Government has to be a facilitator. So how can the government be a facilitator? So let's say, for example, Kirit Bhai wants to probably transfer some of his stock from his Miramar place to, say, some place like Margam. And if he doesn't have good roads, how does he transfer that?
Correct.
So it's government's duty to offer him good roads. It is government's duty to offer him good educational system so that he can employ good people.
People.
Yeah, so it's on that count. Government also keeps the entire atmosphere or social atmosphere culturally very sound, so that, you know, you have got a different perspective to life, which is again a very important thing to look at. You have brought in a very good question about the utilization of a created asset. But then, you know, this utilization of a created asset can never be debated from the point of view of its utility as a capital expenditure. It has not been utilized because there is a lack of political will or there is a lack of vision. Now that is a different issue. The whole logic to that is when for example that hospital at Mapsa came up, there has been a land the land around it probably gained a lot of price. The cement that was used, the steel that was used, you know, there has been a lot of demand or an economic activity or a fervor that has got created. There must have been at least 7 or 8 pharmacies that must have got created, which must have employed at least about 10 to 15 pharmacy people. So the whole logic
but
is.
But that building is hardly 50%. 3 floors are empty.
But having said that, what is utilized is providing a big relief to the North Goa people.
Yeah.
Huge relief.
I would not like to comment on that because I don't know the details of it. So I'm again not debating the utilization of an asset perspective. I think for that reason, government has to get a bit more professional in kind of creating assets and then probably trying to utilize them better. But I think there's going to be a lot of expenditure that we are talking about here, which is going to come in terms of, you know, making that complete 4-way from Pedne to Kankon. I mean, it's going to be amazing because now Kirit Bhai, for example, or Atul can easily employ somebody who stays at Kankon and is able to have them on time because, you know, there's going to be a proper infrastructure available in place. So these are issues that can easily get resolved. Even from an industry perspective, I think if we had to have a good road network across entire Goa, having 20, 23, 26, how many industrial estates do we have?
22 right now. 23rd right. Is under acquisition. 23
industrial estates in a small place like Goa. I mean, I think that's a big debate that you can actually think of. It is not required. If I had to have good roads, it would have easily taken care of transporting people from one place to the other. Mapsa itself has something in Mapsa, it has something in Karaswada, something in Thimi. I mean, you know, these are so closely knitted. I mean, not too sure about, or Madkai, Kundai, Khorlim.
Yeah.
If I had to have a good infrastructure in place and I had to have a good public transport in place, I don't think people would have required so many places. Whereas having few and concentrating on them, giving them the best of infrastructure, it would have really worked out right. But then, as I said, it's a debate that can happen at some other point.
Coming to the next question, and I want especially Dattabab and industry to react to this scenario. See what happened post 2012 when mining was closed. Government sold its ore, it got renewed the leases, then it sold the dumps and all those things, dump renewal fees, transportation fees, ore fees. And it generated almost 2,800 to 3,000 crore when mining was closed for next 2 years, and it survived. So almost 1,200 to 1,500 crores it raised by selling assets, whatever it may be, ore by ore or renewing ores, whatever it is. its economy did not support it to raise those revenues. Then in 2014-15, center came up with a formula that they raised the central grants to the states or the return of taxes to the states from almost 800 crores to almost it went to 2005 post 14 finance commission. That's how it got additional 1500 to 1600 crores per year. Then came the GST, and GST is now fetching them additional 8 to 10% without growing of its economy. So literally it has survived for last 8 years without its economy supporting its additional revenue measures. First it sold its ore, then came the share from the center, and then came the GST. If you look at the GST, commercial tax per se, when it was rising pre-GST, it was hardly 6 to 7%. It was inflationary growth. That every year it used to rise from 2,500 crore to 2,800 crore, then 3,800 crore. But GST gives them a 14% hike, compensatory hike, considering the growth of 14%. I want industry and Dattabab to react on this. For last 7 years, its economy is not building up to give its additional revenue, but the pushes or the additional revenue from the center or the sale of assets, that is giving it additional revenue. So how is the industry and the retail industry, or you are looking at this scenario where its own revenues are not building up and it relies financially more and becoming dependent on the center? So is it losing its financial, or are the states or the Goa losing its financial autonomy to the center, or has it lost already?
So they say the trouble with actually a budget is it's very hard to fill up one hole without digging another one.
Yeah.
In line with this, the state has survived all these years, just as you said, Suresh, because it sold its own resources, what was available, which was dumped, and it has come up. For the state, and I still continue with the same argument that I had earlier, for the state to really benefit and give those benefits to its own people, the state has to become like a businessman. So whatever projects that the state takes have to be commercial projects, business oriented projects.
It may not participate in the business, but the mindset has to be,
it should not
that
participate in the
mindset has to
business.
be
So
professional.
the kind of entrepreneurship that is there has to be promoted by the right support from the state. And that's precisely why we say garbage management plants. We talk about logistics park, we talk about entertainment zones. These are the things that the state should bring forward, which will actually grow the business environment in the state, which in turn is going to benefit the community over here, which again is not going to be highly labor intensive. So you won't have a private entrepreneur who comes in with the patronage of the state having 45% or 50% of its expenses through through salaries.
Yeah.
So wherever you are talking about, like Atul, I agree to what he says, that the state has to provide facilities for the benefit of its own people. So you need to have hospitals, and you need to have Kala Mandirs, you need to have all these facilities. But then again, these are drains on the revenue, because at the end of it all, you are doing it in a highly I
am raising this question, Dattava, because by 2022 you won't have any more compensation from the center for GST.
Absolutely.
That will be lost. So what will you sell then?
Yeah, so
absolutely.
What will you sell then?
I will break up your question in two parts. One is whether Goa as a state becomes more dependent on the union government for its funding patterns, for its activities, let's say. That's number one. Number two is what Kirit mentioned, is the utilization of funds, because funds don't have names written that this is capital, this is salary, this is hospital. They don't have that. So you need money for anything. So it's in the proper fitness of things that you be very cautious when you spend money, particularly as cautious as you would have spent it from your pocket. And I'll just give you an example. The Goa airport, I still call it a new airport, the Goa airport, the one at Dabolim near my house, and that airport came up after 16 months, of its due date of completion. so that must have drained, I don't have the figures, but it must have drained enough of capital on that. Number two, it built a self-controlled and a state-of-the-art drive-in garage parking facility where cars would be very easily parked, and it used to be, it's still horrible, the Goa parking facilities. And that's the first thing which a tourist from outside sees. So that little building, which was built at a cost of 55 crores, is those days, 7 years ago, still it is unutilized. So that just now compare 55,000 crores with the finance cost it must have incurred. So the point is not that one day you will have a multiplier effect, so spend today. That's not the answer at all. The answer lies in prudent planning. Prudent planning, which is more important for our citizens.
Industry would like to react to this.
No, but another point there. Why I said it's a little perplexing to me. Last year, we were promised by the union government in several speeches which ministers from Delhi came and made here, and I take it seriously, that they would give us 10,000 crores for power, because we suffer from power in summer, 11,000 crores for transport and highways, 6,100 crores for Bharat Mala and Sagar Mala, and 550 crores to Panjim for smart city project. So, so now if you add up, 31,000 crores is sitting here. Now, nobody mentions. I would expect the budget to say that where this money is included, how much of that money is included, how much are we going to spend out of this? Because to come back to your point, how much are we going to depend upon the center for our funding arrangements? Okay, so that's of crucial importance, because unless the states are strong, center can never be strong.
So I will restrain myself right now to the discussion of what we need to do to grow revenue from Goa to make sure that we are not dependent. That's a precise point. Okay. So when the Goa Investment Board was set up, the idea was to create employment within Goa by inviting industry to Goa. The focus was on industry. Invite industry to Goa, which will then create local employment. We tried to find out how we could get the local Goan youth to be employed here. So this was the whole idea. When I look at these figures today, 809 units have been registered in the last year. 146 units have been cleared by the Investment Promotion Board. The point today is that we do not have enough land to offer industry which comes in. A lot of our land has been locked up in the SEZs, with the SEZs. Still the cases are pending in the Supreme Court. Something must be done to close this, close the cases, get the land back to the GIDC, which if employed to industry, let me tell you that industry wants to come to Goa and set up in Goa. Simply for the quality of life that Goa offers, much better than any other state in the country. We've got enough people here who can work or can be brought in to work. There are lots of Goans who are outside who want to come back and be in their mother state. The opportunity does not exist. So if this can be done over the next maybe 3 or 4 years, there's an opportunity for industry to grow for sure. Our tourism, as you all said, I don't have the figure. The figures you say that the charter flights have been reduced over the last year. But otherwise, the tourism seems to be a ever-growing industry. I think there's enough potential for it if all that we had envisaged comes up, like the entertainment parks and the film cities and stuff like that, which then makes it. So if you look at any flight into Goa today, if not for that, what you call as a new airport, I just shudder to think what would have happened to the tourists coming into Goa with the old airport infrastructure. I just can't imagine it. So with the number of people today entering Goa and exiting Goa, you see there are some 4 or 5 flights to Hyderabad. We never had flights to Hyderabad in the past. We used to have one small 22-seater, 24-seater. But look at the number of flights to virtually every part of the country today. Without that infrastructure, we would not have been able to get in the tourists and take the tourists out from here. So that infrastructure was very, very important. And I heard the AI's chairman's speech in some this other day, inauguration of some facility other day, where he said that the Goa, the way the traffic is increasing, the new airport and the old airport will both survive. So I think this infrastructure is extremely important. To meet that infrastructure, we must have revenue as well. So revenue can come in through industry, can come in through the entertainment parks, the film cities, and there's service sector, there's IT which is being talked about. There are these 2 major, the ESDM park in Thue and the Chimbel IT park. I think these are great initiatives of the government, but they should be up and running
With-
quickly.
With this point of revenue coming to kitty, I want genuine taxpayer industry to react on this. Now today if we look at many, you see lots of things happening in the tourism sector, or like for example the guest houses, the taxis, you see the issue, and government is not able to control it, it is not able to regularize it. The activity is happening, but it is not giving the revenue in its kitty. It may be rent-a-bikes, it may be taxi operators. Nowadays they don't allow the Kadamba to operate a taxi. It,
So,
how does the genuine taxpayer industry react to this?
So,
Because the uncontrolled activity which does not give a revenue.
So I think let's talk again about where government collects taxes. Who pays the end taxes? So it is the common man. It is me in my personal capacity that I pay the taxes. Whatever is collected before my actual utilization is only a cascading tax. I pay it. I collect. Say as an industry, whatever tax I pay to my supplier is what I collect. I pass through. It's cash neutral.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only tax I will pay, will be paid is on the consumer. The last man on the street will pay the tax. Now again, I'm coming to the multiplier effect. We have got to find out which industry offers the maximum multiplier effect, where the money stays in Goa and it rolls multiple times before it reaches the last man, right? So somebody who is in the IT industry, just for discussion's sake, will have to buy a house, will have to fill in gas in his car, he'll have to buy furniture and daily expenditures. All of this collects tax for you. So if you keep in the money in Goa as long as you can, that will give you the multiplier effect. And that is what we must encourage. So the whole idea is to
But the
encourage.
entrepreneurs should also contribute.
No, entrepreneur's contribution is to create employment. Entrepreneur creates employment. Whatever we buy, let's be realistic. If you buy equipment, we'll pay the GST and we'll take it into a capital account, right? That GST will not go to the government. At some point of time, it will go to the government, it will reside in my books. The point is, what will I do with that equipment? If I employ 10 people to run that equipment, the 10 people who are getting a salary will be spending their money. That is the money which goes to the government. The tax on that money is what goes to the government. So creation of employment becomes the most significant aspect of what our plan should be. And that is what government must plan. I mean,
Does it
everything else.
Does it happen actually? Does it happen actually?
Yeah, interject here. No, we are actually completely not considering an industry which gives a huge amount of tax to the government, and that's the real estate industry and the housing industry. They've got n number of issues as far as taxation is concerned, as far as their stamp duties are concerned. These are the issues that have to be addressed in the budget. Now, with these figures, we don't know, and we can't really say today what are going to be the implications. But there are a number of issues that have come up, and the kind of taxes that are paid by the real estate industry, infrastructure tax for instance, these are the things that need to be actually be considered. Even for industries, there are so many other changes that we need other than the figures that we mentioned. The Goa Factories and Boilers Act. This act again is so important to be considered and to be rationalized, so that work timings of labor, then empowering the women folk to be working at late hours, all this is going to be helping the industry, and whatever helps the industry is going to help actually the state, and it's going to help the community. So these are the factors, in my opinion, which even through the budget they have to be very seriously considered. The number of cess that has been put up. I remember Atul 2014 or 15, we were discussing about the cess on the biodegradable plastic act, which is irrational. And it has been brought.
There was one on hazardous material transportation. There was one on hazardous material on transportation.
And it is accepted, but
But
it is not,
just
it is
one,
not
so I want
tackled
to
in
make
the
one more
budget.
point here, that I'm very happy to see this increase. There's a huge spend plan, 94.9 to 217 for industry. Now, which means that this is a plan to attract industry to come and invest here and start operations here, which would then encourage them to employ more people. The second one is on higher education. You've seen this almost a 100 crore increase on higher education, which is again a very.
In fact, more than that. I think he said through total
90
education he's giving 2,000 crores.
Yeah, but it's 90 crores
maybe
on.
the incremental is that we don't know the figures. But Suresh, to come back to your question, that whether it happens that way, what Atul said, whether it happens that way. Now, I have a view which is slightly in variance with. Basically, I agree, but there is one point which we got to look after today or tomorrow, and that is on the core prioritization. That means, what are my strengths as a state? As a state, what are the core strengths which Goa has, and can we just pursue that core strength? Can you imagine Singapore? Singapore is a country which is, I don't know in fraction how it stands nowhere as far as the area of India and Singapore you take, but it's 6 times our total tourism income, 6 times. So can we develop more of our tourism, like somewhat what Kerala is doing? You concentrate only on tourism or industries which have a synergy with tourism, okay? Transportation, logistics, or things like that, or entertainment, marinas, rail transports, things like that, where you got a distinct synergy with, because there is one area where we are strong as a state. Our people are strong, our boys are strong.
We are falling short of the time, but coming back to the last question, just look at this slide. Now, government is almost running 8 to 12 corporations in the service sector for last almost 20 to 30 years. But look at their balance sheets. Even the transport sector corporation like KTC is minus 198 crores debt to the government. It can't run a corporation, even a tourism GTDC for example, it's minus 6.5, Tourism Development Corporation, minus 6.45 crores.
There is no
loss.
reason,
There is no, even it can't run the corporations in the service sector.
Loss in Goa has
So
no
how do you look at it? It
transportation, it could have been
So
a good mine.
my way
or
of
should
looking
we
at-
consider it's none, government should finally accept that it's none of their business and come out of it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think they should-
That's the
this is one
that's
way-
the best way of going about it.
This is one way that the government can make a lot of money, can raise a lot of money. There are
But
several
it's not
GTDC
happening for
properties.
last 30
Yeah, so
years.
something must
They are
happen
in
there
loss.
that
In fact,
that
it's an opportunity.
it's an opportunity. According to me, it's an opportunity where you can encash
Or
a
it
lot
should
of cash
leave those all
and leave it to
sectors
the private sector.
private
to do
sector.
It.
That's
Leave it to the
I
private
think,
sector to do it.
I would make 3 points here, and that is, number one is, I think business is best left to business. And I don't think the government should really interfere. The government should be only interfering in the field of education, in the field of law and order, and in the healthcare, because these are most important things for any common man to survive. So I don't see why should government be actually selling vegetables. That's a very, very important aspect. What is most important in this entire budget discussion that we have missed out on is the agricultural growth.
Yes.
I think that's an amazing thing that the government has done in the last 2 years.
Fisheries as well.
Correct. I mean, I'm talking about the primary sector.
Yes.
I'm not per se talking about crop agriculture, but I'm talking about primary sector as per this. And the third point, like I said, since it's not the business for the government to do business. Yeah, so I think it's something that the government should work out on. What is important, and where I would probably differ with all the practicing industrialists here, is that government is supposed to be a welfare government. It's supposed to be an egalitarian government. Okay, so it's supposed to be taking care of things even when it is not profit making, as long as it is taking care of the society. So government's paramount importance, or a priority, as he said, prioritize, core priority for any government are the human beings that live in the society. So I think that's the best priority.
2018-19 बजेट मुख्यमंत्री मनोहर पर्रीकारान मांडले. आमी आतां ताजेर डिटेल डिस्कशन पळयलें, पूण बजेटा फुडें आव्हानां पळयत जाल्यार कितल्योश्योच मोठ्यो चॅलेंजीस सरकारा फुडें आसात. मायनिंग ऑलरेडी बंद जालां, GST सारकेले टॅक्स रेग्युलेशन लागू जालां, पूण ते अजून स्टेबिलायज जावपाचे आसात. सरकाराच्यो कितल्योश्योच एरियास आसात जंय एक्टिविटी जाता पूण सरकाराक येणावळ येना, सरकार ते बिझनेसीस रेग्युलरायज करपाक शकना. हाजी इंडस्ट्री मदीं सुद्दां आमी मोठ्या प्रमाणांत हुस्को पळयलो की सरकार एक्टिविटी करता पूण ताजो रेवेन्यू सरकाराक येतलो जाल्यार सरकार ते रेग्युलेट करपाक शकना. सरकारान रेवेन्यू जर डायवर्ट करतले तिजोरे कडेन जाल्यार खुबशी अर्थीक शिस्त स्वताक लावची पडटली. हे बिझनेसीस जे गोंयांत चल्ल्यात, रेग्युलर, अनरेग्युलर, ऑर्गनायज, अनऑर्गनायज, तांकां शिस्त हाडची पडटली आनी व्यवस्थीत तो पयसो तिजोरेक हाडचो पडटलो. आनी प्लस हाडिल्लो पयसो व्यवस्थीत जाय त्याच गजालींचेर जाय थंय मोडचो पडटलो. रिणां घेवनय खंयच्या खंय ती मोडूंक मेळची ना, कारण रिणां पेलपाची ह्या स्टेटीची तांक जी आसा ती दिशी वर्सान वर्स कमी जायत चल्ल्या. हो सगळो हुस्को आमी आयचे डिबेटींत ह्या एनालिसिस्टां कडल्यान पळयलो. तर हे एनालिसीस आशिल्ले 2018-19 बजेटाचे. अशेंच हाजे फुडें वर्सान वर्स आमी तुमचे बरोबर जशें ओनू हाडलां तशें बजेट एनालिसीस आमी हाडीत रावतले. पळयत रावात प्रुडंट.
Thank you.